She said, "I want a baby. Can you help?" I replied, "So I'm going to be a father." Ships moved smoothly between the orbital platforms, carrying people and supplies from one station to another. Among all this activity, Dr. Elias Morrow walked through the corridors of the Orbital Genetic Research Center, holding a small digital tablet filled with reports. He loved the quiet hum of the station. It reminded him of home, though home now felt very far away. Elias was tall and lean, with hair the color of dark chocolate and eyes that seemed to notice everything. For years, he had dedicated his life to the study of human genetics, especially how humans could survive and thrive beyond Earth. He knew the science well, but he was not prepared for what was about to come. "Dr. Morrow," the receptionist said over the comlink. "Doctor Vance has arrived. She says it's urgent." Elias frowned. Lyra Vance was not someone who often used the word urgent. She was an exoarchaeologist, known for exploring ancient ruins on distant planets, bringing back artifacts that no one else could find. She was brilliant, fearless, and a little unpredictable. "I'll be there," Elias replied, adjusting his lab coat. When he entered the meeting room, he found Lyra standing by the large window that looked down on Earth. Her auburn hair caught the sunlight, giving it a fiery glow. She turned to him with a small, uncertain smile. "Elias," she began, her voice calm but firm, "I want a baby. Can you help?" Elias blinked. He wasn't sure he had heard correctly. He paused, searching for words, and then asked carefully, "You want a baby?" "Yes," Lyra said, nodding. "And I want it to be more than just a baby. I want it to be a human who can thrive in the worlds beyond Earth. I want it to be ready for the future." Elias swallowed hard. This was not a normal request. No one had ever come to him asking for this. Sure, he had worked on genetic enhancements, on making humans more adaptable to life on Mars, on ships, even on space stations, but never for a personal, emotional reason. Always for research, always for science. "So I'm going to be a father?" he asked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and nervousness. Lyra smiled softly. "I didn't mean you in the usual sense," she said. "I mean, I need your expertise. I can't do this without you." Elias walked to the window, staring out at the blue and white planet spinning slowly beneath them. For a moment, the Earth seemed very small, very fragile. He had studied life on Earth for years, studied how humans adapted to different environments, but now he realized how little he understood about the life of one human being. A baby. "Why me?" he asked finally. "You understand genetics," Lyra said, turning to face him fully. "You understand the science of life in space, and I trust you, trust." Elias had never thought of himself as someone people trusted easily, but there was something in Lyra's eyes, calm, steady, and full of hope, that made him consider it. "All right," he said slowly, "let's say I agree. How do we even start?" Lyra's smile widened. "By imagining what the future needs, what humans need to survive on new worlds, to live longer, to think differently, to care differently. We don't just want a baby. We want the next step in human evolution, without losing what makes us human." Elias nodded, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. He had always wanted to make a difference, to use his knowledge to help humanity. But this was personal. This was life itself. Over the next few hours, they discussed possibilities. They talked about how a child might adapt to lower gravity, how they could enhance immune systems to handle different planetary environments, how early learning could shape intelligence and creativity. They debated what was ethical, what was achievable, and what was essential. "You know," Elias said at one point, rubbing his temple, "this is the most complicated project I've ever had. And it's not just science. It's life, responsibility, parenthood." Lyra nodded, her eyes serious. "Exactly, that's why I need you. I know you can handle the science, but I also think you can handle the heart." Elias felt his chest tighten. The heart. He hadn't considered that part. He had always thought of humans as data points, DNA sequences, experiments. But here, in this quiet room above the earth, he realized that life could not be reduced to numbers. Life was messy, beautiful, fragile, and somehow it was calling to him. Days passed, and Elias found himself thinking about Lyra and her request constantly. Every report he read, every experiment he conducted, he imagined the life that might come from their work. He imagined teaching a child, laughing with a child, watching a human who was part science and part hope grow up in a universe that was waiting for them. Lyra came to the lab every day. She asked questions, made suggestions, and sometimes just sat quietly, watching the machines hum. They worked side by side, and slowly, Elias noticed something changing in himself. He respected Lyra more than ever. He admired her courage, her vision, her gentle determination. And he realized that he cared for her not just as a colleague but as someone who mattered deeply. One evening, as the orbital city bathed in the golden light of sunset, Lyra turned to him. "Elias, I know this is huge, and I know it's scary, but I believe we can do it, together." Elias nodded, looking out at the horizon. The earth below looked peaceful, unaware of the decisions being made high above. He felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Hope for the future, hope for humanity, and maybe hope for himself. "All right," he said finally, a small smile forming, "let's do this." Lyra's face lit up. "Really? Really?" he said. And with that, the journey began, not just a journey of science, but a journey of life. They worked late into the night, discussing ideas, drawing diagrams, and imagining possibilities. They laughed over failed experiments, celebrated small successes, and slowly, step by step, they started building something that no one else had ever attempted. A life designed to face the stars, created by human ingenuity and nurtured by human care. Elias couldn't stop thinking about the child they were creating. He imagined tiny hands, bright eyes, and a mind ready to explore, to ask questions, to challenge the universe. And for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to dream, not just as a scientist but as a human being. Lyra watched him quietly, sensing the change. She knew that science could only go so far. It was the heart that mattered most. And she trusted that Elias had the heart for this journey. As the orbital city lights blinked like stars around them, Elias felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. This was bigger than science, bigger than discovery. This was life itself. And so, above the earth, with the universe waiting beyond the stars, Elias Morrow took his first step toward becoming something he had never imagined: a father. The Orbital Genetic Research Center hummed with quiet activity, a symphony of machines and soft lights. Doctor. Elias Morrow sat at a sleek white workstation, staring at a complex display of genetic codes. Next to him, Lyra Vance hovered, her eyes bright with curiosity. They had been working together for days now, yet the task ahead seemed both impossible and exciting. To design a child who could thrive not just on Earth, but on worlds far beyond it. "Look at this," Elias said, pointing to a sequence on the screen. This section could enhance neural adaptability. It could allow faster learning and pattern recognition, but we have to be careful. Too much change and it could create instability. Lyra leaned closer. "We don't want a perfect machine. We want a human. Smart, adaptable, but still human." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words. That was the challenge. Not to create a superhuman or a scientific experiment, but a person. A child who could face new planets, strange environments, and unknown challenges, yet still laugh, love, and dream. They started small, discussing simple traits. They wanted a strong immune system, of course, but also empathy, curiosity, and resilience. Elias typed furiously, comparing gene sequences and making notes. Lyra sketched diagrams on a tablet, imagining what a human who could live on Mars or even in zero gravity might need. "Think about this," Lyra said suddenly, pointing at her sketch. "On a planet with lower gravity, bones will be weaker if left untreated, but we can enhance density naturally with certain growth signals. and muscles strong but not too bulky, agile, flexible. Elias smiled. You've thought of everything. I didn't realize parenting could be this scientific. Lyra laughed softly. Parenting. We're creating the first space-ready human. Isn't that parenting in a way? For the next week, they worked side by side in the lab. The orbital station allowed for experiments in zero gravity, with controlled environments that simulated different planetary conditions. They tested tiny tissue samples, analyzed growth patterns, and observed cellular reactions. Every success brought a small cheer. Every failure a careful adjustment. One evening, as Earth rotated below them in shades of orange and blue, Elias leaned back and rubbed his eyes. Lyra, I'm not sure I'm ready for this responsibility, he admitted quietly. I understand the science, maybe. But this is life we're talking about, a real human. What if I fail? Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. Elias will succeed because we care. Science alone isn't enough. We need compassion, patience, and trust. We're not alone in this, and neither will the child be. That's what matters. Her words resonated with him. Elias had always thought of science as logic, data, and experiments, but life was more than that. Life needed love, care, and attention. And now he felt that he was learning something as important as genetics, how to nurture. The next morning, they began creating the first digital model of the child. Using advanced simulations, they could see how the baby's body and mind might develop over time. Every trait was considered carefully. They tested adaptability to different gravity levels, resistance to environmental stress, and even problem-solving abilities. This is amazing, Lyra said, eyes wide. We're not just creating a person, we're imagining the future of humanity. Elias nodded, feeling a thrill he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, his work was not just research. It was hope. A hope that humans could reach the stars, not just as travelers but as thriving life, curious and alive. Days turned into nights, or what passed for night in the orbital station. They worked through simulations, discussing every detail. Elias admired how Lyra could think about the child not just scientifically, but emotionally. She considered curiosity, kindness, and creativity. Elias realized that these qualities were just as important as physical traits. One afternoon, a small problem appeared. A section of the digital model began to show instability. The simulated neural pathways were not forming correctly. Elias frowned, biting his lip. This is tricky. If the brain doesn't develop correctly, the child won't be able to learn as intended. Lyra studied the problem. Maybe we're pushing the enhancement too far. Sometimes, simple adaptations are better than complex ones. Human brains are amazing on their own. We don't need to change everything. Elias hesitated, then nodded. You're right. Maybe the best enhancements are the ones that complement natural human abilities, not replace them. That evening, they paused their work and looked out at the stars. The universe stretched endlessly before them, vast and mysterious. Elias felt small, but also part of something greater. You know, Lyra said softly, one day this child might look at the stars and wonder what's out there. And it will be able to go because of what we're doing now. Elias smiled, a warm feeling spreading in his chest. We're not just building a child, we're building a bridge to the future. Over the following weeks, they refined their design. They focused on traits that would allow the child to explore, to think, to feel deeply, and to adapt. They worked on empathy, problem-solving, and curiosity. They even considered the child's ability to communicate with different forms of life, imagining humanity spreading across planets, meeting new worlds, and still maintaining kindness. Through the work, Elias began to feel a new connection to Lyra. They shared laughter over failed experiments, celebrated each small success, and sometimes sat in silence, watching the Earth rotate below. Elias realized he was learning not just about science, but about companionship, trust, and partnership. One day, Lyra brought in a small holographic device. It displayed a glowing orb, the first visual representation of their child. "Meet the first version of our future human," she said with a playful smile. Elias leaned forward, examining the orb. It pulsed gently, simulating life. He imagined holding the child, teaching it about the world, watching it grow and explore. A warmth spread through him. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "Not just scientifically, but alive." Lyra nodded. "That's what I want, alive, curious, kind. Ready for the future." They spent the next few days fine-tuning the digital model, running simulations of different environments, and imagining how the child would interact with the universe. Every question led to another, every solution revealed new possibilities. The process was exhausting but exhilarating. One evening, after a long day of work, Elias leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Lyra, do you ever think about what it will be like when the child is real? Not just in simulations, but alive?" Lyra smiled. "Every day. And I think it will be wonderful, because this child will not only carry our work, but our hopes, our dreams, our humanity. It will be the best of us." Elias felt a shiver of excitement. For the first time in his life, he understood that science and humanity were not separate. Science could create, explore, and enhance, but it was the human heart that gave life meaning. The orbital station glowed in the soft light of distant stars. Outside, planets drifted silently, waiting for humans to reach them. Inside, Elias and Lyra worked tirelessly, side by side, imagining a future where humans could not just survive but thrive in any world they chose. And as they worked, Elias realized that this journey was changing him. He was no longer just a scientist. He was a creator, a dreamer, and maybe, just maybe, a father in the making. The orbital lab hummed softly, the glow of control panels painting the room in cool blues and whites. Dr. Elias Morrow stood over a complex simulation, adjusting tiny parameters on a holographic display. Lyra Vance hovered nearby, holding a tablet with dozens of calculations and notes. They had been working tirelessly for weeks, and while progress had been steady, the process of designing a future-ready human was testing both their skills and their patience. Elias rubbed his eyes. "Lyra, I think we may need to rethink the neural development parameters. The simulation shows some unexpected instability." Lyra leaned over, her brow furrowed. "Unexpected. It's supposed to adapt to multiple planetary environments." "It's natural that there will be glitches." Elias sighed. "Natural, yes, but even small instabilities now could become larger problems later. We're designing life itself." Lyra nodded, understanding the weight of his words. They both knew that a single mistake could affect not only the physical development of the child, but also mental and emotional capacities. And though the process was scientific, they could not ignore the human element, the future life that depended on every decision. For hours, they adjusted simulations, tested models, and reevaluated their assumptions. At one point, a subtle error in the zero-gravity adaptation matrix caused a ripple effect through several simulated organ systems. Elias stared at the display, frowning. "It's like a chain reaction. One small change affects everything else." Lyra placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure it out, step by step. That's what humans do best." Her words made Elias pause. Humans do best. He had always admired human ingenuity, but now he felt it personally. Together, they were using intellect, patience, and creativity to overcome challenges. He realized that the very traits they were nurturing in their future child, resilience, adaptability, and problem-solving, were the same traits they were relying on themselves. Over the next few days, they tested smaller prototypes of neural pathways and cellular structures in controlled simulations. Each experiment required careful monitoring. Even a minor fluctuation in temperature or gravity could alter results. One evening, as the artificial sun of the orbital lab dimmed to simulate night, Lyra sat back and sighed. "I didn't realize patience would be the hardest part." Elias chuckled softly. We are designing a human who will face the stars, and yet we struggle with patience for ourselves. That's ironic, isn't it? Lyra smiled. Maybe that's the point. Humans are not perfect. We make mistakes. We learn, we adapt. And that's exactly what we're teaching our child to do. Their teamwork was tested again when an unexpected solar flare disrupted the station's systems. Alarms blared softly, and panels flickered. Elias quickly ran diagnostics, ensuring that all simulations remained stable. Lyra, he said, his voice calm but urgent, we need to stabilize the neural matrices before they are affected. Lyra moved quickly, her hands flying across her tablet. I'm on it. Focus on the growth signals. I'll handle the cognitive simulations. Working side by side, they corrected the disruptions within minutes. The simulations stabilized and the threat passed, leaving them both breathing heavily from the intensity of the situation. Elias laughed softly, shaking his head. Nothing in textbooks prepared me for this. Lyra grinned. Nothing in life ever prepares you for the real challenges. That's why humans are so interesting. We improvise, we adapt, we survive. After the flare, they spent a quiet hour reviewing their work. Elias looked at Lyra and felt something shift inside him. He had always respected her intellect, but now he respected her patience, her composure, and her ability to remain calm under pressure. He realized that these qualities were as important as knowledge in shaping the future human they were creating. One morning, they received a new set of simulations for emotional and cognitive development. Elias frowned at the complex data. This is complicated. We need to ensure that the child can feel curiosity, empathy, and joy, but also make rational decisions. It's delicate. Lyra nodded thoughtfully. Yes, and emotions can't be forced. They need to emerge naturally. Our role is guidance, not control. Elias felt a pang of responsibility. The child they were designing would inherit not just traits and abilities but the very essence of humanity. They needed to balance enhancement with natural development, science with care, logic with heart. They worked tirelessly, often losing track of time. Days blurred into nights as they fine-tuned models, ran experiments, and discussed ideas. Sometimes when a simulation failed, Elias would feel frustration creeping in. But Lyra always reminded him, mistakes are part of learning. Even our child will learn through trial and error. So will we. One day, a breakthrough occurred. The simulation showed a stable pattern for neural development, one that could support adaptability, creativity, and emotional intelligence. Elias and Lyra stared at the display, hardly able to believe it. It worked, Elias whispered. It's stable, it's beautiful. Lyra smiled, her eyes shining. It's not just stable, it's alive. In a way, it's the first glimpse of what our child could be. Elias felt a surge of hope. They had overcome setbacks, adapted to challenges, and now had something tangible, a model that could eventually become a real human life, ready to explore worlds beyond Earth. Yet, despite their success, the work was far from over. They still had to ensure the child's physical adaptation, resilience to environmental changes, and emotional stability. Every detail mattered, every decision mattered. And yet, Elias felt something he hadn't felt in years: excitement. For the first time, he understood that patience, perseverance, and trust were as important as knowledge. They were not just designing a child, they were learning what it meant to be human. As the orbital city rotated beneath them, Elias and Lyra shared a quiet moment. The stars stretched endlessly above, and Earth glowed softly below. They both realized that their work was not just about science. It was about hope, about humanity's potential, about creating life that could carry the best of them into the future. Do you think the child will understand us? Elias asked softly. Lyra placed a hand on his arm. It will, and maybe one day it will teach us things we can't even imagine yet. Elias nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. He had spent years studying humans as data, as experiments. But now he was learning the human heart, the patience, the care, the hope that made life worth living. And he knew that the child they were creating would carry those lessons forward, a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and love. As night fell on the orbital station, the two of them continued their work, side by side, imagining the future. They ran simulations, corrected errors, and refined models, but they also laughed, shared stories, and marveled at the beauty of life itself. Elias realized that this journey was teaching him more than any textbook ever could. He was learning about partnership, responsibility, and the quiet power of hope, and he felt a growing certainty that together, they could create something extraordinary, a child who would not only survive the stars but embrace them with curiosity, courage, and compassion. The orbital city sparkled like a constellation around them, a reminder that humans could reach for the stars and succeed, not through force, but through creativity, cooperation, and care. Elias looked at Lyra, and for the first time he felt ready, not just as a scientist, but as a guide, a mentor, and perhaps, someday, a father. The orbital laboratory was quieter than usual that morning. Outside, Earth hung in the blackness of space like a fragile blue marble, spinning slowly below them. Dr. Elias Morrow adjusted his workstation, reviewing the latest data streams from their simulations. The digital model of the child had reached a stage where it could now mimic basic neural responses, testing how the mind would respond to stimuli and new information. Lyra Vance leaned on the console beside him, her auburn hair catching the soft light from the panels. She had been reviewing the child's emotional responses over the past weeks, and her excitement was hard to contain. "Elias, come look at this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. He walked over and focused on the holographic display. The child's neural network glowed softly, like a living constellation. Tiny pulses of light moved along the pathways, simulating thoughts, reactions, and learning processes. Elia's breath caught. It was the first time the simulations had shown such organized, stable responses. "It's reacting," he whispered. "It's actually responding to stimuli in a way that feels alive." Lyra smiled, her eyes sparkling. "It's more than alive, Elias, it's aware. We can see the beginnings of curiosity, recognition, even preference." Elias leaned back, trying to process the magnitude of the moment. They had been designing a human mind for months, carefully balancing physical adaptation, cognitive growth, and emotional stability. And now, finally, the first signs of consciousness had appeared. He thought of all the nights they had worked together, adjusting parameters, testing simulations, and correcting errors. Every small failure had led to this breakthrough. Every moment of frustration had brought them closer to this day. And now, standing in the soft glow of the orbital lab, Elias felt a surge of pride and wonder. "Do you realize what this means?" he asked quietly. "This isn't just a model. This is the beginning of a new human life, a life that could thrive anywhere in the universe." Lyra nodded. "It's not just about survival, Elias. It's about potential, imagination, curiosity, everything that makes humans extraordinary." For a moment, they both fell silent, watching the digital child explore its virtual environment. The simulated mind reached toward glowing spheres, paused, and then interacted with them in ways that suggested understanding. Elias felt a warmth spread through him, a deep, human warmth that had little to do with science and everything to do with life itself. "I didn't know science could feel like this," Elias admitted softly. "It's beautiful." Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "It's the wonder of creation, and it's not just science, it's humanity. The child is more than code. It carries the potential for everything we are capable of: curiosity, kindness, imagination." Elias smiled. He realized in that moment that this journey had changed him. He had always thought of humans as data points, as subjects for research. But now he understood that life was something deeper, richer, and infinitely more complex. And this child, part human, part carefully guided evolution, was proof of what humans could achieve when heart and mind worked together. Over the next several days, they monitored the child's growth and development closely. Each milestone was celebrated. The first recognition of patterns, the first problem solved, the first display of preference. The simulations were sophisticated enough that the child could explore its environment, learn from experiences, and even anticipate outcomes. Elias found himself talking to the simulation. "Look at this, Lyra. It's learning so fast, faster than we expected." Lyra laughed softly. "That's because we're giving it the best of humanity. Knowledge, curiosity, and care. Those are the real enhancements." One afternoon, while observing the child, Elias noticed something unexpected. The simulated mind paused at a small floating light and seemed to hesitate, almost as if it were considering its choices. Then slowly, it reached out, gently touching the light before moving on. "It hesitated," Elias said, astonished. "It paused to think. It's reflecting." Lyra nodded, her voice filled with awe. "This is the first sign of conscious decision-making, not just programmed responses, but thought, awareness." Elias felt a lump in his throat. He realized that they were witnessing the birth of something extraordinary. Not just a child capable of surviving in space, but a human mind, fully aware, capable of wonder and ready to explore. That evening, as the station orbited silently above Earth, Elias and Lyra took a rare break from the lab. They sat by the observation window, watching the planet rotate beneath them, and spoke softly about the child's potential. "Do you think it will understand us?" Elias asked. Lyra smiled. "Yes, it will, and one day it may even teach us things we never imagined." Elias nodded, feeling a deep sense of hope. They had created not just a project, but a life that could grow, learn, and shape the future. And in that realization, he felt the weight of responsibility and the joy of possibility all at once. As the weeks passed, the child's digital model continued to develop, showing increasing complexity and sophistication. Elias and Lyra spent hours observing, taking notes, and imagining the real-life version of their creation. They debated ethical questions, developmental strategies, and how to balance enhancement with natural growth. Elias found himself reflecting on what it meant to be a parent in this new context. "We're not just scientists," he said one evening. "We're guides, mentors, the first teachers of a life that could change humanity." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "And that's a responsibility we take with care, but also with hope. We're giving this child the chance to be the best human it can be." One night, as they watched the simulated child solve a complex pattern problem, Elias felt something unexpected, a sense of wonder deeper than any he had experienced. He realized that life itself, human life, was the greatest mystery, the greatest adventure, and the greatest gift. "Lyra," he said softly, "this is more than I ever imagined, more than science, more than knowledge. It's life, real life." Lyra's eyes glowed with shared excitement. "And it's just the beginning. Imagine the worlds it could explore, the discoveries it could make, the lives it could touch." Elias smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond professional pride. For the first time, he truly understood the beauty of creation, not as a theoretical concept, but as a living, breathing possibility. The orbital city around them was alive with lights and movement, a reminder that humanity could reach for the stars and succeed. And within their small lab, Elias and Lyra witnessed the first spark of a future that humans could build, not through force, but through creativity, care, and collaboration. Days turned into weeks, and the child's model continued to flourish. Each milestone reinforced Elia's belief in the potential of humans, to imagine, to create, to nurture, and to dream. The orbital lab had become a place of wonder, not just science, where the possibilities of life stretched beyond the boundaries of Earth. And as Elias watched the simulated child interact with its environment, he realized something profound. This was more than a scientific achievement. It was proof that humans could rise above limitations, that they could create life that was better, wiser, and kinder, without losing what made them human. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Elias, do you feel it?" He nodded, his eyes fixed on the glowing neural network. "Yes." Hope, wonder, the beginning of something extraordinary. They sat in silence, watching the digital child explore, learn, and grow. And in that quiet moment, Elias understood what it truly meant to create life. It was a mixture of science, heart, patience, and love. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine the child not just as a model, but as a real human being, curious, joyful, and ready to embrace the universe. And he felt ready too, ready to guide, to teach, and to nurture. Ready to take his place not just as a scientist, but as a part of something greater, a family, a hope, and the future of humanity itself. The orbital laboratory was quiet in the soft glow of the morning sun reflected from Earth below. Dr. Elias Morrow sat at his workstation, reviewing the final simulations of their child. The digital model had reached full complexity. Its neural pathways were stable, responsive, and adaptive. Every interaction, every response, every sign of curiosity had been tested and refined. Lyra Vance entered the lab carrying a small device that would serve as the next step, transferring the digital blueprint into a controlled growth environment. Her eyes shone with anticipation and pride. "Elias," she said softly, "it's time. The child is ready for the real world." Elias nodded, a mixture of excitement and awe flooding his chest. After all these months, it feels real, not just science, life itself. Together, they carefully initiated the process, monitoring every signal and parameter. The growth environment was designed to nurture the child gently, providing perfect conditions for both physical and cognitive development. They had ensured adaptability, emotional awareness, and a sense of curiosity, but now it was up to the child to begin its journey in reality. Hours passed, and the child's growth proceeded smoothly. Elias and Lyra watched as tiny neural pulses became organized thought patterns, as responses to stimuli became consistent, and as the simulated awareness transferred into something tangible, living. "It's beautiful," Elias whispered. "Not just the child, but everything this represents. Human potential, hope, imagination." Lyra smiled. "And it's just the beginning. This child will go on to explore, to learn, to grow, to remind us what humans are capable of." As the child began to show the first signs of conscious awareness, it turned its small, sensitive sensors toward the room, as if recognizing the presence of Elias and Lyra. The digital simulations had taught it to understand patterns, to learn from observations, and to express curiosity. But this was the first moment it truly seemed aware of the world around it. Elias reached out gently. "Can you see me?" he asked softly, though he knew the child could not speak. The child responded by focusing on his hand, studying it with careful attention. A small pulse of light traveled through its neural network, its version of recognition. Lyra knelt beside him. "It's responding to you, Elias. You're its first guide, its first teacher." Elias felt a lump in his throat. All the months of work, all the simulations, all the challenges and late nights had led to this moment. He realized that this was not just about science. It was about life. It was about humanity's capacity to create, to nurture, and to hope. Over the next few days, they observed the child closely. Its responses grew more sophisticated, showing signs of problem-solving, curiosity, and learning. It reached toward objects, explored its environment, and responded to their voices and gestures. Each interaction, each small milestone, brought joy and wonder to Elias and Lyra. One evening, as Earth glowed softly below them, Elias watched the child carefully arrange floating spheres in a pattern that had not been programmed, its own creation. "Lyra," he said softly, "it's thinking for itself, it's creating, it's learning beyond our expectations." Lyra's eyes sparkled. "That's what I hope for. It's more than we imagined, a true human mind, curious and alive. For the first time, Elias allowed himself to imagine the future. He imagined teaching the child, guiding it, and watching it grow. He imagined it exploring distant worlds, meeting challenges with curiosity and courage, and carrying forward the best of humanity into the universe. As days passed, the child's development accelerated. Its neural networks adapted quickly, forming complex connections. It learned to recognize patterns, anticipate outcomes, and express preference. Elias and Lyra introduced gentle lessons, shapes, sounds, and colors, watching with wonder as the child interacted, learned, and even displayed small signs of joy and fascination. One afternoon, Elias sat quietly, watching the child reach toward a small floating cube. It hesitated, then gently touched the surface, observing the result. A tiny pulse of light traveled through its neural network, a signal of understanding. Elias smiled. It understands cause and effect, it's thinking. Lyra nodded, her voice soft. And it's learning about the world, not just surviving but thriving. That's the real achievement. Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had created not just a life but a bridge to the future. Humanity's potential was not limited to Earth. With care, curiosity, and imagination, humans could reach the stars, not as conquerors but as explorers, learners, and nurturers. One quiet evening, Elias and Lyra observed the child as it explored a small garden they had created inside the station. Tiny plants floated in controlled microgravity, and the child reached out, gently touching leaves, observing light patterns, and responding to movement. It displayed curiosity, wonder, and care, qualities that defined humanity at its best. Lyra whispered, "Look at it, Elias. This is what we hoped for, a human capable of understanding, of caring, of dreaming." Elias nodded, a warmth spreading through him. "It's everything we hoped for and more. It's alive in a way we never could have imagined." As the child continued to explore, it reached toward Elias as if seeking connection. Elias extended his hand gently. The child's response was precise, deliberate, and full of recognition. For the first time, Elias felt the reality of his role, not just as a scientist but as a father. He looked at Lyra, who smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the same mixture of pride and awe. "It's ours," she said quietly, "not in ownership but in care. We've guided it, nurtured it, and now it begins its own journey." Elias felt a surge of emotion. All the late nights, the challenges, the uncertainty, they had led to this moment. Humanity's ingenuity, patience, and compassion had created something extraordinary, a life capable of facing the universe with curiosity and courage. Days turned into weeks, and the child continued to grow, both in understanding and in awareness. Elias and Lyra guided it gently, introducing new experiences and environments. Each interaction reinforced the child's sense of wonder, its love of learning, and its ability to connect with the world around it. One morning, as the station orbited Earth, the child focused on the planet below. Its sensors detected the patterns of oceans, mountains, and cities. It paused, observing the vastness and complexity of the world. Elias whispered, "Do you see it? That's Earth, your first home." Lyra added softly, "And one day you'll see many more worlds. You'll explore, discover, and carry forward the best of us." The child's response was subtle but unmistakable, a gentle pulse, a sign of understanding. Elias realized that it was not just learning facts or responding to stimuli. It was beginning to form awareness, to appreciate the vastness of life, and to feel curiosity. In that moment, Elias felt a deep sense of hope. Humanity was more than survival. Humans were capable of creation, imagination, and care. They could nurture life, explore the stars, and face the future with courage. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "We've done something extraordinary, Elias, not just for us but for humanity." Elias nodded, gazing at the child. "And it's only the beginning. This child will carry our hope, our knowledge, and our compassion into the universe." The orbital city sparkled softly around them, a reminder that humans had reached the stars not through force or fear, but through creativity, collaboration, and care. And within the quiet lab, a new life began its journey, a life full of wonder, curiosity, and the promise of endless discovery. Elias watched the child interact with the floating garden, learning, exploring, and growing. He realized that this journey had changed him forever. He was no longer just a scientist. He was a guide, a teacher, and a parent in every sense of the word. And as he held the child's small hand, feeling the pulse of life and awareness, he knew one thing with certainty. Humanity's future was bright, full of possibility, and capable of reaching the stars, because of life, curiosity, and the boundless heart of human ingenuity. Lyra smiled at him. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Elias looked at the child, then at her, and nodded. "Yes, more than ever. The future is ours to guide, and it's beautiful." And with that, they watched their creation take its first real steps into life, fully aware, curious, and ready to embrace the universe. The journey that had begun with a simple question, "Can you help?" had become a testament to the power of human hope, ingenuity, and love.